Hello, welcome to Confronting the Darkness. I'm Rob Jacobs, and with me is Father Bob Bailey. Welcome once again, Father.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's always a pleasure to have you. Actually, you're regular around here anyway, so. Tonight, we're going to be speaking about basic demonology. So first, let's start off with what a demon actually is.
Okay, that's a good question. From our Judeo-Christian tradition, what a demon is a fallen angel. Actually, at one point, it was an angel created by God with all the attributes of an angel. But at some point, they rebelled against God. Some traditions have it that they rebelled at the thought of when they realized that the Savior, that God would become a human person, what we call the incarnation, and they would not bow to any part of a human.
Right.
And others, another tradition would also hold that Lucifer wanted to be as God. And so whatever point at that, Lucifer rebelled, and God cast him out of heaven. There were some angels that went with him, and he cast them to hell, which is the place of torment, which is a place where there's no love, and emptiness, coldness, in a sense, and the angels who rebelled were then called demons.
Now, was there a question that obviously the angels were created first?
Yes.
God created man in his own image.
Right.
And this kind of caused animosity with some of the angels because they felt like...
No. It had more to do with Christ, who would become the God-man.
I'd read that, and I'm not sure where it was, that there was not only that, but because God had created man in his image, the angels, so some of them, felt like they were made first, and that they shouldn't have to.
There's various traditions, and that may be one. Whatever the tradition is, the basic truth that comes from all of them was rebellion.
Right.
Lucifer saying, "I will not serve."
Right.
That's his banner.
And another issue here, not as far as that, what demons can and cannot do. Now, when they were cast out, they were of a certain hierarchy of angel. Now, when they were cast out, I believe they kept whatever powers they had.
Angels, when the angels fell, were cast out of heaven, they came from different choirs of angels, whether it be the cherubim, the seraphim, archangels, thrones, dominations, principalities, powers, whatever the 9 choirs of angels. So they did not lose the attributes of their choir. In fact, Lucifer was a powerful angel, a beloved archangel. He was called the angel of light. Right. Lucifer coming from lucis, which means light.
Okay.
And so, yes, so they have varying powers, attributes, things that they govern according to their hierarchy. So whenever there's good, there's also an evil counterpart.
Okay.
So with the angelic hierarchy, there's also the demonic hierarchy.
In what we do, there's a question, can demons read minds? What actually can a demon do as opposed to what they're not so capable of?
Well, one thing that a demon cannot do is demons cannot read your mind. However, they do study you. They have superhuman intelligence, far more than we could ever possess. So they can figure out, after a while, how you would react in such a way. Just like someone in a relationship, a husband and wife, best friends, whatever, would know how a person's going to react to something. You figure that out. Like they do that in a keener way. So it almost looks like they're reading your mind, but they don't.
Okay.
And the other thing that they cannot do, a demon cannot do, is possess your soul, unless you give that over willingly.
Right. Well, talking about possession, let's talk about stages of demonic influence. I'll let you jump on that.
Right. There are 2 basic forms of demonic influence. There's the ordinary, and then there's the extraordinary. The ordinary way of demonic influence is temptation. you know, the old Flip Wilson, the devil made me do it. And that's facing the daily choices we have to make between good and evil, a good act, a bad act, or neglecting to do something good purposely. And so that's how the devil usually works. That is the ordinary, when we are tempted to do something that we know God would not want.
Right.
Now then we have the extraordinary, and that is different other stages of demonic influence that are not uncommon, but not as common as temptation, but they're out there, and they're out there quite a bit. The first one, I would say, that's not listed in some other stages. The first one is inflicting of pain. You know, sometimes the devil can inflict pain, or a demon rather can inflict pain. We look at some of the lives of the saints. Saint John Vianney was a very holy priest from France, and he's a patron saint of parish priests. He was battered about by the devil. So was Padre Pio, Saint Padre Pio. And so, you know, that can happen. So that is one possibility. But then we have the other stages. One is called obsession. And obsession is what it says. It's an obsession, a compulsion. It can be towards a negative behavior. It could be with all of a sudden there's different behavioral changes in you, and that become obsessed. You could be obsessed with, you know, fire, or you could be obsessed with suicide, thoughts of suicide, or any kind of other mental condition, or negative condition. That's obsession. There is even obsession when it comes to some people who want to continue to look for evidence. So they do the EVPs, and they continue it becomes an obsession to want to know something that's, you know, that's of an occult nature.
Right. And we've seen that. We've seen that with other people, especially with the EVPs.
But what I want to say too is that in any of these stages, there also could be the possibility of a psychological issue, or an emotional issue. So if one starts to get depressed, it doesn't mean, oh, there's a demon. There could be a psychological reason. That's why, you know, you need to rule that out.
Right.
But you can pray for healing for it. But any of these stages, if you have some of the, or you know someone that has some of these, doesn't necessarily mean it's a demonic influence. You can tell after a while about where it's come from and where it's leading. The second one is infestation. And infestation deals with what we mostly deal with, where a demon can infest a house, a building, property, even objects, and even animals.
Yeah.
Even animals. And we've seen a little of that, I think, in some past cases that we've done. Yeah. So that's infestation. And then there's oppression. And that's the one I see a lot of pertaining to people. And it gets confused with possession.
Yeah,
it gets very much, you know, that is when a person is being attacked from the outside. The demon has not possessed the person or the body or the mind or anything, but is just attacking from the outside. It could even be in dreams or whatever. But you're being oppressed. Just as, like, you know, slaves were oppressed by their masters. You know, the master didn't take over the body, but they were being oppressed from the source. It's the same thing with demonic oppression. Then there is possession. And that is one of the most extreme cases. And that's when a demon takes over your body.
But not the soul.
But not the soul. That's the whole thing. A demon cannot take over the soul unless it's invited to. But possession can also take on different stages. You know, there can be different levels of that. And so from oppression to possession, you know, where's the extreme case of, you know, the body is taken over, the person's will is eclipsed, Okay? Between oppression and possession, there are other varying degrees. And so that will be handled through prayer and liberation. And then the final one, which is the most extreme case, and that's demonic subjugation. That's when a person literally gives themselves over to the devil, consecrates them, gives their soul over. Maybe is dealing with this so much that it identifies, the person has been dealing with an evil spirit for so long that it becomes part of their life and they're okay with it.
Is that also, they use that term perfect possession?
Yeah. There's some different things about perfect possession. I don't like to use that word.
No, I'm just saying.
So I call it subjugation. We call it subjugation because it's something that, that we willingly give over. Does it become perfect? In the sense that there's nothing you can do. Once that happens, the person willingly gives over, right. You can't, because their will is to give themselves over to a demon.
No, if they are under the demonic subjugation, is there, by themselves, they can't, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, repent and choose?
Of course they can.
Okay.
Of course they can. Whether they can, I don't know. The subjugation, perfect possession is not an area that I make sense. I don't know if we really understand the whole thing of that, very well. Right. Possession is rare. Demonic possession is rare, but perfect possession or subjugation is even rarer.
Right.
But it does happen with some of these groups that do give themselves over to Satan,
Right. Now, possession, we hear that word a lot from a lot of people that either email or call, and they believe that they're possessed, and once looking into it, we find out it's not a possession. Matter of fact, I think in 4 or 5 years now since we've been doing this, where we've had maybe one case that was close to, but not. Yeah, not, and not it really wasn't a possession.
But it was in between. It was getting up to that because the person, the spirit was in there, but it did not take over the person's body.
Right.
Whereas, the person was incapacitated. But it did come out through, we heard the voices and it came through. But what I got to tell you is, I just got a contact the other day and said, help, I need help, I'm possessed. And what I tell them right away is, you can rest assured and be at peace, you are not possessed. If a person is possessed, they are not going to call for help. The demon will not let that happen.
Right.
Unless for a rare reason that demon is trying to call the priest over to do a battle with him to settle a score. But that's few and far between. But if a person says, I'm possessed, they're oppressed.
Right.
And what they're doing is armchair, diagnosing. And so it's good for groups to understand. If someone's telling them, I'm possessed, no.
Right.
No.
Well, that's a good point too. And you spoke briefly on, the mental illness, mm-hmm. and how you have to kind of discern whether you're dealing with mental illness or oppression. But there are times, and we've seen it, that they kind of go hand in hand.
Yes, and there are sometimes demons that work through mental illness, but you can tell after what if psychology cannot handle it, cannot help, then we have to look at something deeper, and that's the spiritual. And that's the thing with the Catholic Church, the wisdom of our church in dealing with demonic possession, because it's a dangerous area psychologically, spiritually, physically. And so the church looks for a medical doctor's input and a psychiatrist's input too to work, and though in many cases, they have those that they send for those, just for those rare cases.
Right.
And so we don't just do like fundamentalists do, like, oh, demon possessed. You're demon possessed. Well, you know what? You can do a lot of damage if you misdiagnose, and it is a real schizophrenia or something, and they're not getting that type of help.
Yeah.
Not that the Lord can't heal it. He can. But God also uses doctors.
Right. And you just brought up dangers, so I want to hop onto that. dangers that people in the field might come into contact with, especially groups that are confronting the darkness, such as we are.
Right. There's more and more groups now that are seeing the reality of dealing with the possibility of dark forces, and particularly in the groups in our network who now have an interest in wanting to be prepared. There is a danger for groups if they do have an occasion where they do confronting a dark force. And so part of our training is for paranormal groups to know the dangers, okay? And some of first of all, not to, the one thing we always say, do not bring a Ouija board in. You're going to open the floodgates.
Right.
And there are people who would do that.
We've seen it. I don't know why.
Whether it's whatever, it's still a divination that opens up the doors, and it makes the situation even worse. So if somebody, a group or an investigator, sees that a case might be possibly demonic, dark in nature, then they've got to stop, reevaluate, and they've got to begin to formulate a plan. Can I handle this? Do I know how to handle this? Should I confer with a group who knows it? Should I confer with someone else? That's
Right.
very important, okay? And also never to start provoking in your own name.
No.
There are people, mature, sound people, lay people who have experience with demonic spirits. There's also priests and ministers. And we do not invoke in our own name. We invoke always in the name of Jesus Christ by his precious blood, and that's only, not in our own name, because they're going to look at you and go, who are you?
Yeah.
And I've seen that. I've seen people, start to, really provoke and call on and all this. And what happens is, if you don't do it correctly, you're going to make the situation even worse now you're going to irritate this spirit, and it's going to start lashing out. Then you're going to leave for the night, and these poor people are going to have to deal with the ire of the demons. So that's another danger for paranormal groups.
Never mind the demonic cases. Even if you're dealing with a haunting of a human spirit, the
Yeah.
provoking is just not right. I mean, you wouldn't be treating a person like that anyway.
No.
So,
and I do see that's another danger to the people. They get fresh with a ghost. Ghost is a spirit. It's a human spirit. Treat it with respect. It was a human being. It's a human spirit now, and it's caught between worlds. In the case that it might be an angry, damned human spirit, those are rare. So if there's activity, they may be wanting something, prayers, help moving on, or something unfinished, and we got to treat that with respect because they're not the enemy.
right.
And I've seen it too many times. They'll go, do this now.
Well, and I think there's a couple of the national ones that kind of, almost make it glamorous, and it's not. Just because it's on TV doesn't mean it's correct, I guess.
And the other danger, too, is going into this without any armor, the spiritual armor. You must protect yourself. You must pray for God's light, for God's shield, for St. Michael and the angels to protect you, for us who are Christian, for the blood of Jesus to be with us, and to go in armored with prayer. Because if you go in again under your own name, of your own, I can handle this, I know my stuff, I can handle this, and go in my own name, you're gonna get clobbered.
Yeah.
And it may not be right away. It may subtly enter within time.
Well,
They're
all the
very
time in
patient.
the world.
Demons are very patient when they want to get their revenge. We know that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't think people understand. It's not, like you said last time, it's not the devil with pitchforks. All of a sudden it's, something subtle here, or problems with friends or family.
And then
a variety of things.
Or you find yourself like not the same person you were. You want to keep to yourself all the time. You're depressed a lot. You never know what can happen. So, but if you're praying before and after, especially after too, once you leave that place, if you're confronting a dark force, or you're in there, you're on their territory. You step down there, they don't play fair.
No.
They will come after you, especially if you're trying to help the client. So you need to pray after you leave too, not only before but after. Paranormal groups need to realize this is a spiritual arena they're heading into. It's an arena that is far different than our human mind can fully comprehend. Therefore, we have to encounter the spiritual world, the supernatural world, with supernatural aids and supernatural help. Unfortunately, the groups that don't enter religion or spirituality in it, God help them.
Yeah.
God help them. Either that or, they're going to be around, going to this haunted sub or this haunted house, or how many times can you go to sanitariums? They're going to go to all that, but they're not going to make a difference in people's lives. And that's what these unsung heroes, these paranormal groups that you don't see on TV or the internet that want to go help people. That's what it's all about.
Right.
Not investigating for the 194th time, this hospital, that's abandoned,
Well, I think, something like that is good for the thrill seeker. If they're not really going in for spiritual battle, or they're not.
But what's the thrill seeking? There's a soul there that's not at rest.
No, this is true.
That soul needs not to be there.
Right.
And that's not very popular among some paranormal groups. But if there's an unsettled soul there, it needs to be helped, not just to be there like a sideshow of a circus that they used to keep all these, the freak shows in there.
Exactly.
And that's what you're doing by going, oh yeah, it's haunted. Okay, but what are you going to do to help these people?
Right.
It's a revolutionary thought in the paranormal world, but we got to start thinking like that.
Yeah. Which leads us to, when dealing with the question of ghosts as opposed to something demonic, on how that's dealt with too. Because that's important. I mean, when I said the thrill seekers, I'm talking from their point of view. That's why they're going to do that type of thing. Not that I agree with it, because it is important. You see, they're going in and they're looking for evidence for their own benefit, I guess, or for their whatever, but it's not helping.
Right, and I can understand that. We all wanted to see something.
Right.
But if you're a true paranormal investigator, there's a difference between being in it for fun and being it as a vocation, at the service of people. And unfortunately, these TV shows too often create the scenario of the paranormal to be fun-seeking, thrill-seeking, and not at the service of people who need help, including the spirits themselves.
Right.
We need to cross them over. We need to pray for them. We need to lead them, sometimes commanding them. You must go. You must go. And that's not being mean to them, but you're commanding the angels to make sure that they go through there because they don't belong here.
Right.
They don't belong in this realm.
That's right. No, we're going to talk about investigating negative haunts, which are, between the malevolent ghosts and the demonic. And I think a point that we can point out for some groups, if they're dealing with a demonic case, they may not find anything, mainly because they're not going in with the spiritual protection or any belief, so they're not a threat. So, I mean, that's one side of investigating the negative haunts.
But also the reality is that the spirits are smart. They're supernatural beings. So they may not just sit dormant. They don't have to perform in front of us.
Right.
They have nothing to show us. They just want to torment the people.
Right.
And so they can go in and just investigate and it'll be dormant. How many times that happened to us?
Oh.
We've gone into places and said, oh, there was a priest here. The priest ran out of the room. How many times I heard that going,
yeah,
yes, there's going to be some spiritual action. I'm going, they ran away from here? Why?
Yeah.
But some of the reason is because it knows that I know, and I know the reality of evil, so it's going to go dormant. That's why we don't get into investigating anymore as much as we do for spiritual liberation prayers.
Right.
It doesn't matter what happens.
No, just
What we get, we're going to bless that house.
right. I had one, I can't remember which group it was, but they were talking to me about how bad the home was, and that, you know, we'd go in and we wouldn't see anything. And I said, well, an important thing to remember is we're not the intended victim. So they're not going to necessarily show themselves
Correct.
to us, because they don't want us to believe they're there in the first place.
Right.
Unless we know for certain it's a demonic case, and then we start with some form of religious provocation. They might show themselves, but you know, it's not uncommon that we're not going to see anything because they don't want us to believe that they're there.
Right. And that's why it's important. I mean, because we used to spend time before I would go in investigating 1 or 2 times and going in, and they get frustrated that they weren't
Seeing anything.
Remember our case manager, Terry, saying, oh, every time you come, nothing happens. I want to say, that's what happens. They
Right.
don't. It's not like a ghost, unfortunately. They take it seriously. They go like,
Yeah.
oh, crap, they're coming
Yep.
for this. And they stay silent, you know.
Yeah, and I don't know how many times we've told people it's going to do one of 2 things. It's either going to get very quiet for you beforehand, or it's going to, all hell's going to break loose. And then when we get there, who knows? I mean, it's either going to be quiet or, and for the most part, it is. It's quiet while we're there.
And I think it's good for paranormal groups who are watching this to understand that if they're going in to investigate and they think that there is a demonic haunt, or if they think it's negative, even if the clients think it's negative, if people on that team have Christian faith, then they can go on to my website, you know, the PWSM website, and find the layperson's prayers of liberation, which I put together because as lay people baptized, we can bless in a certain sense. It's different than the priest blessing,
Right.
but since there's not enough of us to go around that know how to deal with this, I put this together that people can stand on their baptismal dignity and grace and be, you know, and go and help in their
Right.
own way. And you've done that. You've had to do
Yes.
that from times, and you've seen that there's been
Yeah,
good
effect.
results.
And unfortunately, I have to cut us there. We did have a couple more topics, but that'll be for another show. We're right up against the clock, so I want to thank everybody for watching this episode of Confronting the Darkness. And we look forward to doing another show and having you pop in to see it then. Till next time.
And remember, when confronting the darkness, put on the light and the sword of St. Michael.
Till next time, I'm Rob Jacobs.
And I'm Father Bob Bailey.
Good night.